I know a lot of the people in the room, but I haven't had the chance to meet everyone yet. So for those who don't know me, I'm Chris Rowlands. I'm a director at the Iirsm Recruitment network. That's this lot here. You'll see a bit of info on your seats. That's, you probably couldn't even get to your seat. There's so much stuff on there. But don't sit on the pens. Our brand is the Executive Network Group. So there are 3 other brands, sister companies of the Iirsm Recruitment network. For reference, so we also recruit in the HR space. We recruit procurement professionals. We get all the sexy stuff, and then we recruit for senior managers and directors within the FM and construction space as well. So why do I tell you that? Why do you care? I guess we've just got a lot of experience of hiring for different roles within lots and lots of different industries, particularly HR, health and safety, and procurement. We pretty much recruit in every sector, from leisure and events through to construction and manufacturing and law firms, believe it or not, and everything else in between. So I like to think we can add something to the conversation around how to remain relevant and achieve your career aspirations. So we've got 3 fantastic speakers. Yeah. We have, I guarantee.
Well spoken, yeah.
I can say that now, don't remember that. But I have no doubt that you're going to get loads and loads of good information and good insight from the 3 speakers we've got today. So I'll run through this quickly. Normally, in this role, I talk you through their career, but I'm not going to do that because the whole purpose of this is how they've reached the position they're in. David Wilson will be our last speaker today. So David, without going into too much detail, I won't steal your thunder, spent a long time in the Royal Navy. Very long time in the Royal Navy. And currently works for the support services business and government outsourced business, Serco, I'm sure you've heard of. Stephanie currently works for Unite Students. So why these 2 people in particular? So excuse the description here, David, but David has been there and he's seen it and he's done it, and he's a senior risk professional. So this isn't his first senior gig, is the explanation there. So why does he still do it? What got him there in the first place, and what are the challenges that he's going to face? Stephanie is in her first top job, if you want to call it that, and on maternity leave at the minute, so congratulations. What does it feel like? What does it feel like to have that first job, the responsibilities that go with that, and also where does your career kind of take you from there as well? First up is Laura, my colleague Laura, who's over here hiding.
Hiding.
She usually does that. So Laura has been with the Iirsm Recruitment for 8 years. If you're on LinkedIn, you can't hide from her. She is relentless on LinkedIn. So I promise I wouldn't say this to start any kind of LinkedIn war, but we overtook NEBOSH with followers today. So
we were more than that.
So we're now 42,500 followers on, but we're already, the 2 of us are already well ahead of our social media is obviously a big part of the way that we communicate with our candidates. So, but Laura's going to talk to you about our view and our understanding of.
Hello.
You're on the panel. Take it. So Laura's up first. Before I do, I won't speak for too long, I promise. So I just want to talk. I'm not going to talk about in particular kind of career aspirations. I just want to talk about it from, because career aspirations is within you, isn't it? It's what do you want to achieve in your career. I think the opposite side of that is if it's not relevant to what companies want, then, and it's not converging on the same point it's somewhere along the lines, then you're almost not working in congruence with the market. So that's something that Laura's going to cover. But in terms of what's important to professionals today, I've got some insight into this, particularly I lean on our HR director feels for this. And I'm sure, I don't need to put hands up, most people have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and that's been around 50 years now. But I'll just throw this out there because Facebook did a survey of their own employees, including Nick Clegg, I assume. Good hire. We weren't involved in that one. And they did a survey and they tried to get it down to the 3 things that they thought were important to their employees. And you can talk about millennials and there's loads of sweeping generalisations, but Nick Clegg being an example, they do employ a diverse workforce. So they got it down to the 3 C's, which was career, so that's about the work that you do, no great surprise there. But does that job play to your strengths, and does it develop you as a person? The second C is community. Do you feel part of something? Do you feel respected? Do you feel cared about within your organisation? And the last one is cause, and you hear a lot about purpose, but their C is cause, and do you have a meaningful impact? And actually is the place you work a source of pride? So that's my only advice at the start is, when you're thinking about the kind of companies you work for, where do they tick your 3 C's would be the message there. leave that thought with you in terms of your own career path, and these three individuals will give you much better advice than I have. So I'll hand over to Laura at this point.
Yeah.
A round of applause, if you will.
So, evening everyone. Chris, I think, obviously read my notes beforehand because you stole the first sort of paragraph of what I was going to say.
Oh, is that yours?
So thank you for that.
Sorry.
But yeah, so I'm Laura. I'm from HSE Recruitment. As Chris said, I've been here for nearly 9 years now. So the reason I wanted to speak to you is I'm really embedded in the market. We really know what clients are looking for at the moment, what makes someone stand out. And I wanted to give you that sort of information and help you move your career forward in that respect. So I'm going to start out with what might be a little bit of unwelcome news, so I'm very, very sorry about it. The health and safety market is saturated with candidates at the minute. There's thousands of you out there. How do we go forward on this?
There's a...
There you go.
Yeah.
So, just to look at some of the stats at the moment, there are over 47,000 professionals registered with Iirsm. That's not every health and safety person, that's just the ones that have registered. On average, every time we put out a role or a company puts out a role, they're getting between 20 and 150 people applying for that role. That's a good indication of how many people are actually out there at that sort of level. I got this stat, so NEBOSH can tell me whether this is true or not. I got this from an article you did for SHP, but courses that lead to NEBOSH qualifications are attracting over 50,000 candidates a year. That's an incredible number of people heading into this sort of industry. Over 620 people provide courses for NEBOSH alone, and when you look at the fact that there are new qualifications coming in, such as NCRQ and things like that, you can see why maybe the market is a little bit saturated at the moment. Am I saying that every single person with those qualifications is equal and equally good, has the same sort of skills, same ability? Of course I'm not. That is absolutely not true. But the main point is that at the moment, just being qualified isn't enough. You've got to do a lot more.
Laura, can I just ask that 50,000? I assume
Yeah.
that's internationally rather than...
It is international,
just
yeah,
in
not
the
just the UK, but still a pretty large number. So obviously all of this is why it's so important that you don't just understand what you do as safety people, you understand the market space that you're in, you understand what people are looking for, and you know how to sell yourself, which is something a lot of people I think really struggle with. Come on in. So it's really important to have a very clear and consistent plan that isn't just based on your qualifications, because you're very likely when you apply for a role to be up against 100, 150 other people that have all got the same qualifications. So what makes you stand out? So in the same way that honestly most health and safety job descriptions look exactly the same, most health and safety CVs look exactly the same. This is pretty much what we get most of the time. So you name your address, how qualified am I, this is where I work, and I do risk assessments, I do accident investigation, I do liaising with reps. That's kind of a given, to be honest. If you don't do that stuff, I would be concerned. So obviously it's still important that that stuff is on the CV, and you are matching what you do to the job description, because that is how you get through that sort of first stage. But you need way more than that now to actually get that interview and get in front of the client and then get the actual job at the end of it. So what I want to do is start off just by looking at the market. Let's see what's going on out there, let's see how that kind of affects you. So the two biggest industries at the moment for safety are manufacturing and construction. There's a lot of similarities with the other industries as well, but these are probably just the two easiest to focus on. So manufacturing. Over the last few years, we've massively seen in manufacturing that they are stepping away from generalist roles. That isn't something that they want anymore. It used to be, if you went back 4 or 5 years ago, if you had a NEBOSH qualification and you had manufacturing experience in kind of any manufacturing company, you'd probably get the job. That doesn't cut it anymore. Not good enough. What they're really looking at is a lot of focus on middle management. So can you actually hands-on do the role? But what specialism have you got? That's a huge thing for them at the moment, because they want people that understand the business. They want people that get why they do what they do, they get the production side of it, they get the whole remit of it. And I think health and safety people have been quite guilty of perhaps being siloed in the past and not necessarily being a part of the company as much. So one of the things we're seeing as a result of that is now roles aren't traditionally health and safety manager in manufacturing, they're QHSE. And that's all to do with that being part of other teams, understanding what's going on in the business, having a more well-rounded view. So that's something that's just going to grow and grow. The other stuff is all like project-based, so I've got culture change and behavioural safety. This is massive at the moment in manufacturing. They've spent a really, really long time, same in construction, on getting the basics right. But now what? It's all about those sorts of next steps. The thing that's really hard to do is show culture change and behaviour safety on your CV, and I get that. But what you need to kind of do is take the person on a bit of a journey when they're looking at the CV. So it's not just, like I said, what do I do day to day? It's, okay, when I joined the company, this is where the safety culture was. This is what people thought of it. This is what happened on a daily basis. And this is where it is now because of everything that I've done in the company. And that can start to show the impact you're having and the engagement you're having. You don't need to go into tons of detail because you save that for your interview. You know, you save the really good stuff when you're in front of them. But you've got to pique their interest. And you've got to just get that foot in the door. So that's a big thing, the project-based stuff. And although I said qualifications aren't the be-all and end-all, auditing at the moment, massive, again, in manufacturing. And again, you go back 4 or 5 years, and if you said on your CV, yeah, I've developed the systems, I've implemented the systems, that was good enough. Now they want to know, okay, can you audit against them? Do you truly understand the nuts and bolts? So internal or external qualifications, auditing qualifications, make a huge difference. And then there's things like COMA in manufacturing, having an actual really specialist bit of knowledge, because there are very few people out there at the moment that have that COMA knowledge. So something like that is going to step you up and make you look better than the competition. If we look at construction, very similar sort of trends at the moment. So yeah, the culture change, the behavioural safety stuff is in there again. Again, because construction is massively focused on the bottom line previously, and maybe they cut a few corners to get stuff done. They don't want to do that anymore. They want to get it. They want to get people bought into it and understanding it. The training one is huge in construction. Really, really big piece at the moment. And again, that's all to do with engagement. It's to do with the fact that they think they've probably got the nuts and bolts now. People are wearing their PPE. You know, they've got their working at height. They know what they're doing. But it's that engagement piece. So CITB approved tutors is really, really good. If you're a CITB approved tutor, that instantly puts you miles above the competition. And obviously all the well-being and mental health stuff that we're seeing going around at the moment, big in all industries, but particularly construction. They're really, really pushing on this at the minute because there's some staggering stats going around about construction, in that more people die from mental health problems in construction than actual injuries or accidents on site. So that again, if you've got some sort of, mental health first aider or even just general experience in that, and you can demonstrate that on the CV, that's going to get you sort of head and shoulders above everyone. So how does that apply to you, and how are you going to use all that information about what's going on to progress your career? So the massive thing is you've got to have a really strong and a really detailed plan. And when I say detailed, I mean every single step. You know where that endpoint is, you know every single step that you need to get to that endpoint. So to use myself as an example, when I joined HSE 8 years ago, I joined as a trainee, I had no experience whatsoever, and I knew I wanted to be a partner. That was the end goal. That's what I want to be, a partner in this company. And there was 6 or 7 different steps I had to take to get there. So every year, when I came in January, we put together a business plan, and everything in that business plan was around, okay, by the end of this year, how much closer am I to that end step? What things have I got to do during this year to get me that much closer? And I really think it's got to be that detailed for you. If you don't know where you're going, then you don't know how to get there, you don't know what that next step looks like. So that's a really, really big thing for me. mentoring is a huge one, and one I think people don't really take advantage of enough. So a good example, which ties into the career plan, we've got a guy that we know called Matthew Beckett. I'm sure he won't mind me sharing his name. We got him his first job in health and safety 8 years ago, and he's now a global EHS director, and that's a huge step in 8 years, and that's because his plan was that detailed. He's now giving back by mentoring, and he's looking for people that were in the same sort of position as him, that were scientists or lab people that want to go this route, so he can sort of give back, and that's something we should all be taking advantage of. So I know Iirsm have had the mentoring pilot scheme going this year, so that's something I would really advise you all to look into. Whether it's as a mentor or mentee, it doesn't matter. I think all of it is really valuable. There's this thing about reverse mentoring at the moment. So you can be a senior professional and you're still learning from the people that you're mentoring, because they'll know stuff because of them being, I don't know, younger or in a different space or just a different background that you won't know. So it's valuable for everyone at all levels. And then this is, as Chris alluded to, my absolute favourite thing in the world, social media presence. You cannot get away with not doing this anymore. You just can't. So you're going to have to get on board, I'm afraid. And you, obviously there's other social media things out there. You've got Twitter and Facebook. From a career perspective, as long as your LinkedIn is right, that's the most important one at the moment. The reason for that is we're talking all about when you apply for jobs, whether it's through an agency, whether it's through a company direct. Most of the jobs don't get advertised. You'll never even hear about them, because the companies either approach someone like ourselves to covertly, confidentially approach people, or because they've got in-house teams that do that. And the way they do that is all through LinkedIn. So if you haven't got that strong social media presence, people are never even going to tell you about what's out there, and you're missing out on a huge amount. So a few just little tips, there's loads we could go into, but I'm not going to bore you with it all, so just a few little things. The first one is, I don't know how well you can see that, but so you've got my name, and then underneath, Health and Safety Contract Specialist. If when you're filling your profile in, that says job title, don't put your job title. Never put your job title, because Health and Safety Manager doesn't describe everything that you do. So if someone is searching for someone, and they're looking for, someone with one of those areas of specialism, or someone who understands cultural change or something like that, they're looking for completely different keywords than Health and Safety Manager. So what you want is something like one of these titles. So Safety Professional, Behavioural Safety Expert, Coma Experience Professional, Integrated Management Systems Auditor, and Safety Specialist. That tells so much more of a story than Health and Safety Manager at XYZ. So that's the first thing I would absolutely tell everyone to do, is change that job title to what do you actually do. Again, not sure how well you can see these, but we'll send the slides around afterwards anyway. LinkedIn gives you the opportunity to put so much more documentation and so much more evidence on there than you can put on a CV. So this is actually a well-rounded representation of yourself. The CV is so two-dimensional. What you can do on here, so if you look at the first one, top right, you can just see the little sort of the 4 black boxes there. Those are videos of seminars that I've done, speaking engagements, PowerPoint presentations I've done internally, externally. You can put training things up there, you can put whatever you like, but something that just demonstrates a bit more about you, again, than just doing the day job. And testimonials. I never understand why people don't have testimonials on their LinkedIn profile. It's so easy to do. You just go up to someone that you've worked with previously. You like what I do, right? It takes 2 seconds, just write me a little thing on that. Because again, when people are looking for someone for a role, that's what I'm focusing on. I want to know what your peers think of you. I want to know what all your colleagues think of you. Because you can tell me anything, but they're going to tell me what's actually going on. So definitely, as much documentation, as much testimonials, as much personality, I guess, as you can put on that. And then this one, which is where everybody falls down, is about actual engagement on social media. Having the profile isn't enough. It'll help because people will find you, But what they want to see, again, is that personality. You know what you're talking about. You're engaged in the community. You're more than just in your health and safety bubble. So whether that's writing articles, everyone is terrified of writing articles. I promise you it's really not that difficult at all. They don't have to be complex. Say, for example, you see the second one down there, that was about the Pret incident with the teenage girl who died, unfortunately, from the allergy stuff. I read that in the newspaper. I'm fascinated by how that could possibly happen. It's 1 or 2 paragraphs, just of my opinion of what's going on, and then asking for other people's opinions. That doesn't take long, and it doesn't take you to have a degree in English or to have any sort of actual writing skill. It's just showing you and what you're interested in. Commenting on and engaging on other people's articles. So someone puts something up on, I don't know, the new 45,001 system and what they've been doing and how they're putting it through in their company. Comment on it, ask questions, give your opinion as well. Because then if I or someone internal from a company is looking for someone and they're seeing your activity, they're thinking, yeah, you know, this guy really knows what he's talking about. This isn't just someone that says, I know 45,001. They're engaging, they're showing me that they have a genuine interest and a genuine knowledge about it. So it's not just about likes. And that's what people are so guilty of. They go out and they're just like stuff. That doesn't matter. Don't need to like anything. It doesn't help at all. So, obviously this was a really quick run through, but a bit of an overview basically at the moment is you've got to be more than a generalist. You need to show us that you are more than just that list of day-to-day tasks. So if you've got areas of specialism, emphasise them. If you're interested in stuff, explore that stuff. That's what makes you you, and that's what makes you different to the 300 other people out there applying for the job. Try and show your journey on the CV. Where was it? Where have I got it to? Demonstrate some commercial understanding. So that's just tied into that whole, do I understand the quality side of it, the environmental side? Do I understand that the company's got a bottom line? You know, we can't just come in and shut production down. I've got to do something else. But don't forget to still put your keywords. And all of that stuff is still important because that gets you through the first stage. Make sure you've got a really detailed career plan, literally step by step, for the next at least 3 years. If you can do 5 years, if you do 10 years, the more the better. Look into mentoring. Even if you think you're at the top of your game, look into mentoring, because you'll help someone and I promise you they'll help you. And then social media. Actually do something with your social media. Make sure there's personality on there. Make sure that they're seeing why you're good at what you do and genuinely engage with people. So yeah, like I said, that's a really, really quick overview. We can't go into way too much detail, but hopefully that's given you an idea of what's going on in the market, what people are looking for. More than happy to speak to people afterwards, or if you want to get in touch with me and ask further questions, you've got all my contact details here, and we've obviously got the Q&A at the end as well. But thank you. Yeah.
So as Laura mentioned there, so we're going to have a Q&A panel which Barry, there he is, hi Nick. Barry from NEBOSH is going to join as well, so a strong 4-person panel for you later. So I promise I'm not going to stand up and have a little platform in between everyone. So I'll leave the next 2 speakers to go one after the next. But we have got 2 genuine leaders within the health and safety and risk space here. So I thought I'd just touch on soft skills and emotional intelligence and all those words that you hear that are really scary because you can't just go and get a qualification in them. So I thought I'd just touch on those. And in relation to what really, so another scary phrase, the 4th Industrial Revolution. Ooh. So that's scary. So what the hell does that mean? So it's about technology. It's about the next big changes within the businesses that we all work in. And I just thought I'd drag one thing out, and it's 3 C's again, so there's the theme today. The World Economic Forum do some really interesting research and publish it around the skills they think will be most required for professionals of every type. And they usually do it, they're just released for 2030, but I thought I'd go back a few years and look at what they deemed would be most relevant for professionals in 2020, because that's not that far away, is it? It's nearly Christmas, you can see the German market out there. So, the 3 that came out on top, again, 3 C's. The first one's a bit of a cheat, because it's 3 words. The first one starts with a C. But let's go in reverse order. The third on the list, they believe, is creativity. The second on the list is critical thinking, and Holly and I have definitely spoke about this in the past in the greater scope of what does risk mean, and what does risk and resilience and the opportunities that come with risk mean to businesses. So critical thinking. Number one, I feel like I have a drum roll. Number one is complex problem solving. Now I'm sure all of you deal with complex problems, maybe in your personal life, but within the work environment every single day and every single week. How, and this is the World Economic Forum, so don't shoot the messenger, they believe that complex problem solving, and it's actually been top for the last 2 surveys, and their surveys are usually about 4 to 5 years apart. So complex problem solving is there. Do this qualify as soft skills? You might expect to see emotional intelligence in there and communication. They're on there, but they're not in the top 3. So we're about to see 2 people who've got creativity, critical thinking, and complex problem solving in abundance. So I'm going to hand over to Stephanie first, who's going to talk to us about the current role and the career path to that day.
Yeah, you can leave it on that screen actually, because I'll just sort of dive straight into it.
Okay.
So thank you for the intro. As you've said, I'm recently appointed Head of Safety at United Students, so I started in April and then immediately went on maternity leave, so I haven't really had a chance to kind of get my teeth into the role yet. But I will go through in a moment sort of how I got to that stage and what sort of career steps I took were to get to that. So straight over to the little video. So just to give you a bit of an overview about United Students. I promise I won't dance to these. Just train myself.
Very much.
Focus on food. Food banks are important.
They are indeed.
Critical to us.
Do you think that's
Some critical problem solving.
Yeah, very creative, so mine and the rest of it.
Yeah. Should we move to the presentation, do you think?
Yeah. So the bit that you didn't see that it was about to tell you, our kind of tagline that we use. Oh, there we go. There we go.
No, you've done it.
Do we have insurance?
Number 1, insurance. I don't think it likes it, does it? So. Yeah.
So the tagline that we use, or our kind of statement that we use for students that come and live with us, is Home for Success. So we are the UK's largest builder, owner and manager of student accommodation. As it says up there, we house 50,000 students across the UK. And because we use this term Home for Success, we try to set students up for success in the rest of their life. We don't just see ourselves as a landlord, and we try to give them the skills that they need to succeed in their career and in their life. So it starts off with using social media. As you can imagine, we try to get students to meet online before they actually settle into their new home, and then we give them sort of skills along the way to set them up in life. In terms of some of the main issues that we deal with safety, as you can imagine, students' first time away from home might be the first time they've ever used a cooker, an oven. I've had some students try and do a barbecue on the hob, piled up coals on the hob, and then wondered why they set fire to the kitchen. And then another student, there wasn't a shelf in the oven, so they took one out of the fridge instead and wondered why that melted. So we've had a few special incidents, but I won't generalise students at all. As you can see, briefly see that halls have changed, so it's much more about, it's much better than when I went to uni anyway, it's much more glossy. So the main thing really, the main issue that we deal with is fire safety. But as you can imagine, and you've probably seen a lot in the news, you've kind of touched on it earlier, we do also deal with a lot of mental health issues and anxiety related issues with students, so a lot of the stuff that we do has moved towards supporting students and that sort of pastoral care. Okay. Just briefly in terms of a team, so as head of safety I've got a team of 7 safety managers sort of split across the regions. We are currently looking for a regional manager in London, just put that out there. But we've also got kind of more niche roles, so we've got a fire safety manager, we have a risk and resilience manager within the team as well. Okay, so that's where I am now. How did I get there? I'll go back a sec. I spent 18 years of my life wanting to be a vet. It was at the time when unfortunately only 1 in 5 applicants got into veterinary science, and I found out the day before the UCAS deadline closed that I didn't get in, so I ended up doing a zoology degree instead, which was kind of the closest thing I felt at the time. Quickly having realised that a zookeeper was not the profession for me, I then sort of spent the time researching what was a more sort of vocational career that I wanted, and came across environmental health, so I did a master's at UWE Bristol in environmental health. I was living in the Cotswolds at the time, so I started a job as a student environmental health practitioner at Cotswold District Council, but as you can imagine it was a fairly sleepy town. Town's not a huge amount going on, but I did get kind of good grounding and base in inspection and enforcement. So when a job came up at Hilton Worldwide, so it was Assistant Health and Safety Manager at the Hilton London Metropole, which is that beast of a property you can see there, which it's made up of 3 different sections. There's 1,000 bedrooms, and they had at the time the largest conferencing facilities in Europe. So it's almost like a mini city within a hotel. Vast kitchens, big events that took place. It was a lot of risks that we had to deal with. Then an opportunity came up to go for a role as area manager, so I looked after London and the South East. There's about 19 different properties that I moved around. And then an opportunity again came up at United Students in 2014, and I've done a few different roles since moving to Unite. So started off in London, then moved on to a sort of more niche role the first time I came back after maternity leave. It's on my second one now. And then I moved to interim head. The head of safety job came up sort of towards the end of last year, but I started off by taking that interim role. So again, just a bit of a tip from me is that if there is a position to actually try out a role and demonstrate that you can do it, it's a really good opportunity, and it actually demonstrated to me and to the company that I could do that role. I think we were both, I'd say, me and my boss, we said, right, let's give it a good go, and it was really successful, and I felt I really flourished in that role, and I think it gave them the confidence to go for it with me as my first role. Okay, so my tips for taking ownership for your own personal development and for your career. It's that sort of be proactive, take risks and seize opportunities. I think just sort of talking through the career moves that I've made, so moving to London, to the big smoke away from the sleepy villages that I lived in, was a big risk for me. But again, it paid off sort of taking that risk and seizing that opportunity. At the same time, again, when I moved from assistant manager to area manager in Hilton, there were a few people who said to me, you are not ready for this, it's too big a role for you. But I did it anyway, and I think that's it from me, just go for it. And I'll be honest, the same with the head of safety role. There are people that sort of, thought it's your first role, you're not ready, but sometimes you have to go first, you have to lead, and you have to have a good go at it. And I got the role. My second tip is to find that balance between qualifications and soft skills. So I think we've covered that well already. But what I try to do is, when I do love a qualification, I do love the letters after your name, but I think every time I do a qualification, I try and balance it with doing a soft skill. So some of the things I've done is business writing skills, some leadership and coaching and mentoring as well. So just trying to really get that balance, as you've said, on your CV, and for what employers are looking for as well. And then lastly, I'd say really try and find out what your learning style is, and that has helped me to build my CV and build these sort of soft skills. I'm not very good at reading, just because I don't have the time, really, with 2 children. I really struggle to sit down and read a book. So for me, I learn by listening. So I'm just going to go through a few tools that are available that I've found really helpful to me, and hopefully you would find helpful too. Audible, I'm not promoting Amazon in any way, I'm not getting any commission, I promise. But they have some fantastic audio books on there. A couple that have been really kind of, not life-changing, that's a bit dramatic, but really, really great for me. This is an oldie but a goodie. I could not sit down and read that thick book. It's quite heavy, it's quite intense, but actually listening to somebody read it to you, you help start to absorb that information a lot easier. The second one on Audible that I've really loved is this book by Robert Cialdini, so Influence. As safety practitioners, as you know, we need to be able to influence people, and that's got some really great tips in there about how to sell what we do, if you like. Podcasts, massive favourite. It's a big surge in podcasts at the moment. Anybody listening to the Grenfell Tower inquiry? So they've produced a daily podcast on the inquiry. Obviously, with the nature of what happened, it is very harrowing and disturbing in places. However, there's critical information that's coming through from that inquiry that we can really be on the front foot of what's potentially going to come out of that. A lot of information coming through from fire safety experts about what they will potentially be recommending after the inquiry is finished. And I think it's just really important for us as safety and risk professionals to hear that first-hand experience from people who are involved. Second one is a bit cheesy. It's got a really cheesy theme tune. It's the Disaster Cast. But if you are studying NEBOSH Diploma, you need to learn about cases in history that have had impact on legislation and the way we do things. Again, it's somebody reading out to you that case study. Barber, you're probably aware of Barber, they do a series of webinars, and what I didn't realise is that you can go back in and look at the back catalogue of all the webinars that they've done and listen and watch at your own leisure, so you don't have to sign up on the day at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday when you might be busy. You can go back and have a look through those. This one I had to mention. This wonderful magazine.
We've got copies at the back.
Again, it's just my learning style. I like that there's lots of pictures in there and I can absorb that information. It's very cute. And then the last one is TED Talks. Again, I'm sure it's one that you're all aware of, but it's not. It's about those soft skills and about developing those areas. And again, it's that visual element of it. Okay. Not just because NEBOSH are in the room, but so I've been described by my colleagues as a mixture of these two lovely characters. So Monica Geller and Hermione Granger, so basically I'm a competitive geek, which means that I absolutely love the NEBOSH diploma, and it's just really if there is anyone in the room who is kind of thinking about whether or not to do it. For me, it sort of filled in all those gaps in my knowledge that I had once I'd been practising safety and risk for a few years. And then just sort of continuing the theme of learning styles. I love a post-it notes, which is why I was delighted that there was post-it notes available for NEBOSH today. But again, that's my sort of learning style when I was doing the diploma. It's a huge amount of information, and it was about how do I get that information to go in. So that can kind of help when you are studying and you are doing qualifications and you are learning new things. Think about how to get that information to stick. Okay, so just moving on to my thoughts on remaining relevant. Again, we've kind of covered this. We've talked about creativity, and again, I think it links in really well with innovation. The world of work, as we know, is changing. We need to keep up. We've mentioned social media. I will be updating my LinkedIn tomorrow. But a few things that we use at Unite Students. So we use social media to engage with our customers. They are 18, 19, 20 years old. How do we interact with them? A lot of what we do is through social media. So these are a couple of the student safety campaigns that we've done this year. So we've done a sort of personal safety campaign about security and safety of their properties, and then we've used student bloggers to talk about fire safety with our students. So we do an annual campaign of fire and personal safety. Some other things that we're using, we have issues with blocked or covered smoke detectors. So we're getting sort of QR codes and 3D images and things put on there. So as you look with your phone, some kind of scary thing comes out of it to tell you not to cover the detector. So we're just thinking of ways how can we do things differently that engage our students and our customers. This one is a very sort of personal one to me, so sort of thinking about innovation, but really through to how do we get the best out of people, what motivates people. For me, my motivation, my two little girls, sort of put them up there, but what I'm continuing to think about innovation is how do we work innovatively. And for me, one of the big movements in the last year or so, or 2 years, is about flexible working. I wouldn't be able to do the head of safety role without my work being flexible. So it's sort of appealing to recruiters and employers to think, let's not just say that we work flexibly, we offer flexible working, but let's really think about who are we missing out on in the market if we're not actually then supporting that in real life. If you want to find out more, you can follow #FlexiPeal on social media. And really it's just to say, we, in the safety and health and risk professions, you've mentioned about, Laura, about mental health and wellbeing, and talking about construction, but do we really lead by example? We will only continue to remain relevant if we really do live by those values and really support it in the workplace. If I've got someone in my health and safety team who is stressed and off work with stress, how can I go out and promote health and wellbeing? It just doesn't add up. And then lastly, networking. So we're all here tonight, so it's just really key, I think, to kind of, it's difficult, it's just an evening, it's not very nice weather out there, but just taking that time to get to know and meet people, you never know what connection it might sort of build for you and opportunity it might provide. And this is just really to make you aware finally of the Emerging Risk Leaders Network that I'm working on with the Iirsm. If you want any more information, you can speak to Holly and myself at the end about this new network that we're looking at. And I think that's it from me.
We'll go straight into it. Need to load up.
Yep. Hopefully your YouTube video works.
Yeah, let's hope so. I've got a video as well. Hopefully it will work.
Do you want me to leave it on the YouTube?
Let's go straight to that, I think. Let's do
Yeah.
that first of all.
Okay.
Sorry, David Wilson. I'm here to talk to you about, my journey in risk. So I joined the Navy a long time ago now, and this is all about my journey both in the Navy but also my exposure to risk whilst doing it. Being in the Navy, military force, obviously it's risky inherently because occasionally people might want to shoot at you. But this, I hope, will show you that actually just being at sea can sometimes be risky. So I hope that sets it up perfectly, if it works. It's slightly cheesy. This is a World War II film, okay, but it is one of the best films ever made by the British film industry. And this is just the trailer. I'll let it run. Great stuff. This is why I joined the Navy. I know it's very romantic, but this is why I joined, because I fell in love with this, that picture of the sea in the background, and you start seeing, what it might be like to be at sea, and then to potentially have nasty things happen to you.
This is the story of the Battle of the Atlantic, the story of an ocean, 2 ships, and a handful of men. The men are the heroes. The heroines are the ships. The only villain is the sea. The cruel sea. The man is made more cruel.
No green screens in those days.
What's it look like now, number one? It's the firmest contact we've ever had. There's men in the water just about there. Well, there's a U-boat just underneath them. Attacking, stand by.
Okay, so that clip, it's the intro to the film. The reason I wanted to show you that is because in that particular scene, Jack Hawkins, who's playing the captain there, is having to make a decision. He's having to make a risk-based decision. Okay, there are people in the water, and in accordance with the International Convention of Saving Life at Sea, there is a requirement on all seafarers to save life at sea. So he's now having to make a decision between what he's been taught all the way through his naval career, which is, you know, if there are people in the water, I need to save them. But at the same time, he's now at war. And the reality is, he's got a submarine underneath there, and if he doesn't do something about that, that submarine will either kill him and his crew, or potentially go off and kill lots of other people. So he has to make a risk-based decision. So I bring that up because I think, I hope, paints a very interesting picture of how my life started in the Navy. So the two pictures here, and all the way through, it's just full of pictures, and I'm just going to be talking. But hopefully as I go along, I'll sort of bring out some of the key learnings that I had. So here we've got Britannia Royal Naval College on the left-hand side, and the painted hall of Greenwich Royal Naval College on the right-hand side. Very grandiose, both of them. I went to Dartmouth straight from school, so I didn't go to university. I wasn't a student, I'm afraid. I went straight to, because that's what I wanted to ever do. I was a lad from Leeds, that's what I wanted to do. I'd seen films like that, I thought, that's for me, that's what I want. So I joined the Navy. I went to Dartmouth, spent about 18 months there or so. And what did I learn there? Well, one of the things it teaches you, and it's a bit like being a student in a way, self-reliance. Okay? It teaches about self-sufficiency, a little bit about self-indulgence, we all need it occasionally, an awful lot about self-worth, being unselfish, but also that introduction to risk. And I'll tell you a little story. So part of your training at Dartmouth is to go off and do a leadership exercise, and you go away for 3 days, and they plonk you on Dartmoor, because it's quite close to where Dartmouth is, and then you spend 3 days on Dartmoor with no tent, just what you're carrying on your back, and you effectively have to survive. Well, it's not particularly difficult, because any human being can survive for 3 days without food. The water is a little bit more difficult, but it's Dartmoor, it's September, October time, there's plenty of water, trust me. We were coming off, and actually our exercise on Dartmoor was quite a hot summer. It was one of these Indian Octobers that we had. And they always do this thing, military people always have to compete with each other. So there was a big race. We had to race off, and we were in teams, and we had to race off Dartmoor, which was about a 12-mile hike. So we're racing off Dartmoor, we're all carrying heavy packs. It's quite tiring. We spent 3 days with no sleep and blah, blah. One of the people in the teams got heat stroke quite severely, so much so that their heart stopped and they were on the verge of dying. And the introduction to risk here was, well, okay, how are we going to deal with this? We're on Dartmoor. You can't get a Land Rover up there. We've got no mobile phones, because this was the day before mobile phones. So we can't get hold of anybody. What are we going to do? So thankfully, one of our leaders was first aid trained, so he managed to keep things going. The way we innovatively and creatively, using one of the C's, got around this was and it's slightly funny now we tell the story, we rounded up Dartmoor ponies. So we had to get a Dartmoor pony, which are very difficult to catch, trust me, especially when you're dressed in green running around like this. But we got a Dartmoor pony, and that was how we got them off the moor. Got them close enough to where an ambulance could get them, and we got them off. So my first introduction to risk was that very exercise. And of course there are lots of other little anecdotes I could tell you. How do I move on to, is it just...
Yeah, there should be arrows.
Got it, it's okay. Okay, attention to the little things. This is really important in risk. Very often I see it, and especially we're guilty of it as the more senior you get in risk and risk management, and the more companies look at risk at a slightly more strategic enterprise ways, we tend to forget about the little things. We tend to aggregate things up into just bigger and bigger problems. On the top left there is HMS Corn. HMS Corn is a mine hunter, so its job is to go out to sea and find mines using a sonar. So looking ahead of the ship, trying to find very complicated, very complex and extremely expensive ships. It's about 50 metres long. It's probably somewhere in the region of £60 million worth of kit, with about 40 people on board. The big explosion there is the sort of thing that will happen if you put a ship in the wrong place. And a ship underneath that, mines are designed to effectively lift the ship out of the water, break its back so it completely sinks. So my first exposure, that was my first ship I ever had when I was about that high. And we went to war. I went out to the first Gulf War in 1991 on a ship like that. Attention to the little things. So I was the gunnery officer. This is out in the Gulf War. The war was declared on the, I think it was the 19th of January in 1991. We were at sea and we were up the top end of the Arabian Gulf, and Serco missiles are coming off Iraq. And that was all very interesting. And my gun teams were up and I was up. And then it all calmed down, so I said, right, okay guys, you all need to go get some sleep. And all of them, bar none, said, no, we're going to sleep by the guns tonight, because they didn't want to be found to be short of not being able to react if they needed to. They were thinking about the little things. They were thinking, actually, if I can't get from my bed, which is somewhere at the front of the ship, up to my guns, which is somewhere in the middle of the ship in time, things could go horribly wrong. So, attention to the little things. On the bottom left there is HMS Marlborough. She's no longer with us now. She's in the Brazilian Navy. I was the navigator on there. I could tell you lots of stories about that. The one I will very quickly tell you about is I was the navigator. My captain was a senior captain. He'd been a captain of a number of ships in the Navy, including a submarine, so he was really, really experienced. We did a manoeuvre with another ship which went really well. I was very, very happy because all my calculations had all worked perfectly. And we were sat side by side going up the channel. And the other ship was going up to Portsmouth, and we were turning around and going on deployment out to America. So great, brilliant. So as captains always like to do, they always like to have a little bit of a chinwag. So my captain went to have a chinwag on a VHF radio with his opposite number on the other ship, which was on the disengaged side. So they was on the other side of the ship to where all the action was going to then happen. He told me to increase speed, so I did. So we're increasing speed. At the same time, the other ship did the same. And my captain told me to turn north, and we ended up doing that. And I had to countermand the captain's order to try and save the ship, after which I then got a complete telling off by the captain in front of everybody on the bridge. After which, interestingly, he asked me to go down to his cabin afterwards, and he said, do you know what, I know what you did there, you saved my ship, so well done. And the trust that I got from that allowed me to do an awful lot of things I wouldn't have even tried to have done as a navigator before. So attention to little things is really important, and you need to have that attention to little things to deal with the complexity. We talked about complex and complex problems and creative thinking. Breaking it down to post-it notes on a wall actually is really important. I did the planning for the campaign in the Northern Arabian Gulf for 10 years on post-it notes on a wall. Okay? That was how I started the plan. That was going to be a 10-year plan for military engagement in the Northern Arabian Gulf. So, attention to little things. Right. Noting that I am between you and the wine and the food and various other things, I will move on relatively quickly. This is important. Things will go wrong. In risk, I have to recognise that things will go wrong. Okay? Sometimes, and I do see it with my engagement in health and safety, sometimes people don't want to recognise that sometimes things go wrong. So we've got to get it. In the military, we certainly get it. So the top right there, that's HMS Vanguard, banging into Portsmouth Dockyard. We're trying to get out of Portsmouth Dockyard. For those who know Portsmouth at all, what is being built, so what's there is a big pub, a very, very big pub. That would have been a disaster to Portsmouth if that had been hit. But what you don't also see is the end of the ship, so the stern of the ship. It's sitting at sort of about 45 degrees to the angle, to the entrance to the port. And if the tide had been in the wrong direction, it would have gone beam on to the port, completely blocking Portsmouth. This was in 1947, 48. There's a lot of ship movements because Portsmouth then was a very, very, very busy naval base. We probably had more battleships than we have frigates and destroyers these days. So that was a real problem, and luckily they managed to stop that happening because of the tugs and what they managed to do. On the bottom right there is the HMS Antelope in the Falklands War. She took a bomb through the side of the ship, it exploded, and the subsequent fire ignited the magazine, and that's what you see there. It was a very famous picture that was taken during the Falklands War. And I come back to the one in the middle. Okay, that is an individual. This is our damage control training. So every Navy person is trained to fight fires to a particularly high degree. We're also trained to put softwood wedges in the sides of ships to try and keep the water out. Okay, it's a low technology solution. It's been with us since Nelson was sailing easily. Okay, but it actually physically works, which is great. So things go wrong, but actually good risk management, training people to do that, can help stop the two things on the right. Okay, but you've got to recognise that those things on the right happen in order to give you, sometimes to give you the impetus to get the training, to get the desire to set the cause that people wanting to do this. Okay? I have to say, being in the Navy and also now being in Serco where I am now, the 3 C's you talked about, cause, communication and community, all over it. It's really good. Okay, risk taking. Okay, another 3 pictures. So 2 of them there, the HMS Bangor crest and the ship on the bottom left-hand corner. That was my command. I was very fortunate to be captain of HMS Bangor for almost 3 years. Up on the right and the top left-hand side is an image that's supposed to convey to you the complexity of what war at sea can be like. It's best for those who know the Big Bang Theory, and my children make me watch it almost every day. It's equivalent to the 3D chess that they like to play, okay? But this is actually in 4 dimensions. So you've got problems above the water from aircraft and missiles and blah blah blah. You've got problems on the water from other ships. You've got problems under the water from submarines. There's also space if you really want to throw that in, and then there's the land that you're dealing with as well. So it gets really, really, really complicated. I was the anti-air warfare officer on HMS York, which is an air defence destroyer, and I was in charge of an air battle over about 500,000 square miles. That was my battle space that I ran on behalf of my captain. So that 3D game of chess happens, it's very complex. It requires a very large team to work together to a common cause. You need to retain the big picture. Okay, it's really important to keep out there rather than get sucked in, and that's a really good lesson, certainly for risk, is understanding where does that risk sit in relation to all of the other problems that you as a company or as a business or even as an individual have to deal with. The trust yourself, use a team, courage. So a team to drive that picture, sort of that picture up there, that 500,000 square miles. That was a team of about 40 people, all working together for a common cause. And you do need courage because you're going to have to be making decisions like that. Okay, some of the missiles that are now out there travelling at 3-4 times the speed of sound. So they're travelling at about 40 miles a minute if it's 4 times the speed of sound. So you've got a reaction time measured in about 10 to 15 seconds. So it's really important that all of that comes together in that one instant when it has to. Okay, we're nearly at the end there. So I've given you a very quick canter through about 27 years of my naval career. Okay, there's an awful lot more stories I could tell you, but I don't want to bore you. These last 3 pictures are really where risk management hit it for me. So I've been in an environment where risk was very real, very visceral, and I moved more into the management of it. The little map with lots of white ensigns all over it is trying to show you I was in the Navy Ops, so my job was to run effectively the Navy's largest overseas operation in the Arabian Gulf, somewhere in the region of about 3,000 to 4,000 people, plus all the kit and all the rest of it. But Navy Ops is worldwide, so it covers all the problems that the Navy has across the world. The Royal Navy's budget, when I left, it was in 2017, was 5.4 billion. So quite a large turnover, 33,000 people, of which 7,000 are Royal Marines. Nuclear and conventional deterrent these days, you'll know that the government have invested in a new aircraft carrier for the Royal Navy, so we're now doing nuclear as well as conventional deterrent, and of course the global footprint. The picture on the left-hand side there is when I first probably used risk management for real. So that is a very small P2000, which is about 20 metres long. Okay, and it's there. There are a couple of them up in Faslane that help protect the nuclear deterrent as it's going out to sea from lots of things. Principally, our friends in Greenpeace who occasionally get in the way. Primarily, it's to protect them from themselves because a submarine, that submarine there, the Vanguard class, is about 12,000 tonnes when it's moving through the water. It doesn't alter coursal speed very quickly. And unfortunately, Greenpeace ribs can do, and we have had occasions in the past where Greenpeace, when they're rightfully demonstrating for their cause, get themselves in hot water because they just get themselves too close and they can't move out of the way. But in terms of risk management, what was interesting was the little P2000 at the front there. When the military bought them, they did the wonderful thing. We're going to save money by not putting the proper engines in. So they found that they had some diesel engines just lying around from Challenger 1 tanks. So they put Challenger 1 tank engines into ships. There's a slight problem. I won't go into too much into technical, but effectively for a ship, because a ship's going through the water and it has friction all the way through, you want more torque at the end of the range of your engine than you do at the beginning. Whereas with a tank, because it's a big hunk of metal, you need a lot of torque to get it moving. Once it's moving, it's fine. So we had the wrong engines. So these engines, that ship could get it to about 18 knots if you were lucky. The problem is they're also old, and so they kept breaking down. What you don't want to do is have a ship breaking down, and you can't really see the distance there, but that's probably about 50 metres ahead of the nuclear deterrent. It's just not good. So in terms of risk management, one of the things I had to say was that's not good. We are taking a risk here that we shouldn't really be doing, so we need to do something about that. And through a bit of skullduggery and about working about what happened if, and doing a bit of Monte Carlo analysis, doing a little bit of scaring people with numbers, because that always works in risk, although it's very difficult sometimes. Actually, they realised that that was probably not a very good idea, so they up-engined the engines. The bottom left-hand corner is Navy Command, so that's in Portsmouth. When I was in Navy Ops, I took on the role as effectively the head of risk for Navy Ops, primarily because the second Sea Lord, who's the CEO of the Navy, came in and said, I'm going to run the business by risk. Great, everybody said, what does that mean? And I went, well, I know a little bit about that. So I was almost self-appointed as head of risk. Because of the risks that I was dealing with, this is the risks of naval operations around the world, which included the nuclear deterrent, and clearly anything that goes wrong with the nuclear deterrent very quickly goes up to the Prime Minister. So almost by default, I started getting roped into doing risk management for the Navy, and that's where I ended up being. I was Chief Risk Officer for the Navy for my last year in the wonderful service that I was in. Keep it simple. That's what KISS stands for. Keep it simple, stupid. And in risk, too many times I come across people who try and make risk sound really, really complicated. It's not. It's just about sorting out a problem before it becomes a problem. It's really simple. I wish if I could take anything away from this, please keep it simple. Challenge people to say, what is the problem you really want to get to deal with here? Okay. And focus on the benefit, because that's another interesting one. Again, in risk, I hear too many times people talking about threat. Risk, when they talk about the word risk, they associate it with problems and things that will go wrong. People rarely actually look at the definition of risk, the effective uncertainty and objectives, which can be positive or negative. And opportunities are really important. And there's a great, I'm very tempted to look at this from an opportunity basis. How do I secure the opportunity rather than how do I avoid the threat? Because it's a far better conversation. Okay, we're almost there. So where am I now? So I left the Navy in September last year, and I joined Serco. Why did I join Serco? Well, it was the only job offer at the time. but there is an attraction. Okay, Okay, the 3 C's you talked about are really important. One of the things I love about Serco, and I know that outsourced providers come under a lot of stick, and I know that companies like Carillion have previously got it wrong, and in fact Serco got it wrong quite substantially back in 2011, 2012. So I know they get a lot of stick, but a lot of what they do deals with some of the most vulnerable people in our society. So they run prisons, they run hospitals, they run asylum detention centres for asylum seekers, which sounds negative, but actually the positive there is helping people in really difficult circumstances. They run recycling and refuse collection for local councils. They pick up roadkill from roads. Now, I didn't know that, but I found that out 2 weeks ago. And it's something that we probably all take for granted, but actually it's quite a big public health problem, especially as we get more and more cars on the roads. So I was really attracted by that, and I think Serco's got a really good story to tell. It's a very difficult business to be in. It has decided as a business to focus just on government contracts. So we just do government, we don't do anything else, which means profit margins are really, really small, 2 to 3% maximum, which when you start taking risk and start factoring risk in, and this is potentially where Carillion went wrong, okay, they didn't understand there were risks they were taking when they started taking on contracts. So the answer was, it was all about getting stuff onto the balance book rather than understanding what are we actually really letting ourselves into down the line. Challenge Waddled. So, we always did it this way. We always do it like that. Is another way to describe it. Challenge it, please. I know you probably challenge it in your health and safety roles, but challenge it, challenge it, challenge it. Okay, it's a red rag to a bull to me. If anyone says that word, I go in there and go, okay, tell me why. Show me why. Show me the evidence why that works and not something else. Keep it real. So the KISS principle, keep it real. Really try and get to the bottom of it. What is it about the problem you wish to describe in risk? What is it that really that you need to do something about? Because ideally, and we all work for companies where there isn't a lot of money, there isn't a lot of resource. We need to be making sure we deal with the right things, not everything. And finally, leadership. It's really important. In risk, in health and safety, in compliance, which is another area I work in, having sharp elbows, but doing it in a nice way with the soft skills that you generate and you gain through experience of dealing with people. It's all down to leadership. It's all about how do you lead in risk or health and safety or whatever it is that you do. And that's something that I don't think can really be taught. A little bit of it can be. A little bit of it you can generate your skills from it. But a lot of it's got to be from the heart. You've got to really feel it and be passionate about it. And I hope I've given you some idea of the passion I have for risk management. That's it.
Yeah, I told you they'd be good. Thank you.